Vintém Hill, Niteroi. The bay is below. The bay is the color of tin in winter. From the top of the hill, on a clear day, you can see the whole city of Rio across the water. The Sugarloaf, the downtown towers, the long bridge that drops down to Niteroi itself. Vintém Hill is 200 meters high. The lower slopes are houses. Higher up, the scrub begins. Thin, pale grass, scattered rock, the path that climbs through it invisible from below. At the top, in the clearing, the wind comes straight off the bay and you cannot hear a thing. Tonight we go to Niteroi, to the southern Atlantic, to the 17th of August, 1966, to a hill on the bay where two electronics technicians walked up with the right clothes for the weather and the right bottles for the heat and a notebook with the next 2 hours written down, and were never seen alive again. Stay past the signal, dear listener. What I'm about to tell you has been told 1,000 times. Almost no one has told it like this. Stay with us tonight. By the end of this story, you'll learn what was written in the notebook and why no one ever read it the same way twice. If this is your first visit, take a moment to subscribe. There's always a place for you at the fire. Less than 2 months before, on the 21st of June, Brazil had won the Football World Cup for the 3rd time. In England, Pele, Garrincha, the young man from the favela, the country had danced in the streets. The mood on the 17th of August, 1966, was a strange mixture of confidence and instability. A country that had just won the world, and a country that was being governed by men in uniform. The country was also, and this matters for the story, deep into a turn toward Espiritismo, Kardecist Spiritism, the Brazilian reading of the French Spiritist doctrine. There were Spiritist centers in every bairro. There were seance tables in middle-class apartments. There were people who spent Tuesday evenings with their hands on a glass on a table and who asked the glass where the lost wedding ring had rolled. The men who walked up Vintém Hill on the 17th of August, 1966, lived in that Brazil. Their names were Manoel Miguel da Silva and Miguel José Viana. Manoel was 25. Miguel was 33. Both men were family men. Both men fixed televisions for a living. Manoel ran his own little electronics repair shop. Miguel was a part-time attorney by training who had drifted into electronics work on the side and who had, in the previous year, been appointed a deputy commissioner in the local police force. Honorary title, no salary. They lived in a town of about 150,000 people on the flat, hot plains of the Norte Fluminense. The town was 300 kilometers east of the new capital and 300 kilometers northeast of Niteroi, the bayside city across the water from the city of Rio itself. The men's families gave the press, in the week after their deaths, the version of themselves they were most comfortable with. Working men, quiet, who went home in the evening. Other versions came out later. On the 14th of August, 3 days before the climb, Miguel telephoned his friend, an electronics partner named Élcio, and told him a story. He said he had been given information about a hidden treasure. He said he had been told the treasure's location by a spirit at a seance. He said there would be a great deal of money waiting for them and that he wanted Élcio and Manoel to come along. The treasure, in the version Miguel told Élcio on the telephone, was sitting in a cave. The cave was on a hill near the city of Niteroi. The spirit who had named the hill had given specific instructions. The instructions included a date, a place, an hour, a small bottle of mineral water, a packet of capsules, and a tin mask. Élcio declined the invitation. He thought the story was strange, and the way Miguel told it was stranger. Manoel accepted. On the 17th of August, Miguel and Manuel took a bus together from the Norte Fluminense town to Niteroi, 3 hours east. They arrived mid-afternoon. They were carrying 2 suitcases. The suitcases, when they were found a few days later by the police, contained 2 lead masks, 2 raincoats, heavy full body, the kind a man wears to walk in a storm for an hour, a small bottle of mineral water, still sealed, a small notebook written in Portuguese, and about 7 million cruzeiros in cash, 161,000 of which were still on the men's bodies when the police found them. In Niterói, the 2 men went to a small electronics shop called Fluscop. Miguel bought 2 of the lead masks there. They were sold as radiation shielding masks for technicians working on the new color television sets. The shopkeeper gave them the masks in a paper bag. Then the 2 men walked up the road past the harbor to a clothing shop called Casa Brasília, and they bought 2 raincoats. Then they walked to a bar called São Jorge on the corner near the bay. They sat at the bar. They ordered 2 glasses of water. They drank the water at the bar, but they kept the bottles. They put the small bottle of mineral water they had brought with them in a paper bag with the lead masks and the notebook, and they left the bar. It was about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. They crossed the street and started walking up the path that leads to the top of Morro do Vintem. The path crosses scrub and rock. The path narrows near the top. People do walk up, occasionally, for the view. The police records say the men passed 3 people on the way up, a woman washing clothes in a bica below the path, 2 youths, and a man carrying firewood. It took them about 45 minutes to reach the top. What they did when they got to the top is what the notebook says they did. The notebook is small. The notebook is written in pencil. The notebook has been photographed and rephotographed. The Portuguese in the notebook is broken. Stay past the signal, dear listener. The notebook still says what it said. The notebook reads in its entirety, in translation, 16:30 be at the specified place. 18:30 ingest the capsules. After the effect, protect the metals. Await the signal mask. The notebook has been translated and retranslated and reinterpreted by every Brazilian student who picked the case up for a school project, and by every UAP researcher who picked the case up for a magazine column, and by every podcaster who picked the case up for a Tuesday video. The notebook says the same thing every time. The reading of the notebook has never stayed the same. 16:30. The men arrived at the clearing at the top of Vintém Hill. They took off their raincoats. They unfolded the raincoats on the ground, and they sat on the raincoats. They did the things people do when they arrive somewhere they have been told to go. They waited. The lead masks are oval. The lead masks are the color of wet stone. The lead masks are not theatrical. They are the kind of mask a technician wears to protect his face while he solders the inside of a television tube. The masks weigh about 1 kilo each. The masks, when the police found them 3 days later, were on the ground beside the 2 men, face up. The inside of the masks, the side that would have pressed against the men's faces, showed clear impressions of the men's faces. The impressions had not been made by the mask's lead pressing into the skin. They had been made by something that came from inside the masks and went outward, into the men's faces. Or so the police and a French ufologist named Jacques Vallée, who visited the case in person in 1980, have been saying for 60 years. 18:30. 2 hours after they arrived. The notebook says 18:30 ingest the capsules. The notebook does not say what the capsules contained. The notebook does not say where the capsules came from. The notebook does not say who made them. The notebook does not say why. At about 7 o'clock that evening, the same hour more or less that the notebook says to ingest the capsules, a woman named Gracinda Barbosa Coutinho was at her home on the bay in the Pendotiba neighborhood below the hill, with her young at her side. She saw a luminous oval object above the hill. It had a ring of fire around it. It emitted blue rays. It hung in the air over Vintém Hill for about 4 minutes. The light did not move. The light did not take off. The light went out. The light had one witness. On the 18th of August, a young hunter out in the scrub at the top of the hill saw the bodies. He ran down and told a patrolman. The patrolman did nothing. On the 20th of August, another lad, Jorge da Costa Alves, who was a youth of the parish, was flying a kite on the lower slopes of the hill. He walked up. He saw the bodies. He told the police. The police did not go up. The weather was too bad. The path was too steep. The night was closing in. It wasn't until the following morning, the 21st of August, that the police actually climbed the hill. The police found the two men sitting on the unfolded raincoats 4 paces apart. They were sitting upright. The raincoats were spread out below them as if they had been carefully arranged. The lead masks were at their sides, face up. The notebook was on the ground between them. The mineral water bottle was lying on its side near Manoel. The masks had been removed and replaced. They were inside out on the men's faces. The convex side of the mask was over their skin, the open side faced outward. The arrangement looked, to the men who first arrived on the hill and to every investigator since, like the masks had been taken off and put back on the wrong way. Both men were carrying wallets. Both wallets contained money. But the suitcases, which had been left near the raincoats in the clearing, contained almost none of the cash they had started with. Of the 7 million cruzeros they had brought with them, only about 160,000 remained. 95,000 on Miguel, 66,000 on Manuel. The notebooks, the police said later, had been carefully written. The men's faces, the police said later, had not. Manuel was wearing his wedding ring. The wedding ring was on his left hand, the standard position. The wedding ring was the only jewelry either man was carrying. The wedding ring was not removed during the autopsy. The wedding ring went back to his family. The wedding ring is in the police evidence locker at Niteroi to this day. The men's families have asked for the rings back. The state has not returned them. The autopsy was performed on the 26th of August by Dr. Fabio Medig and his assistants at the Instituto Medico Legal in Niteroi. The autopsy report runs to 45 pages. The report is still in the case file. The men's faces were dark. Their hair and eyes had faded to a uniform brown. There were no marks of violence on their bodies, no cuts, no bruising, no bullet wounds, no ligatures. The lead in their bloodstreams when the report was measured was higher than the lead in a normal technician's blood, but not by enough on its own to explain the deaths. Dr. Medic's conclusion was that the two men had died of edema pulmonar, pulmonary edema. The cause of the edema, Dr. Medic wrote, was a substance. The substance was not identified. The substance may have been in the capsules. The substance may have been in the mineral water. The substance may have been, the report said carefully, something else. Élcio was the friend who had declined the invitation. Élcio was the friend who, in the days after the deaths, told the police what Miguel had said on the telephone on the 14th of August. Élcio's testimony is the basis for everything we know about the spirit, the treasure, and the invitation. Élcio had never believed in seances. Élcio did not now. Élcio told the police that Miguel had been different in the 3 weeks before the climb, quieter than usual, more attentive to the television when Spiritist programs aired, less interested in his electronics work, more interested in sitting in on sessions. Élcio had not known where the hill was. Élcio had not known what was in the capsules. Élcio did not go with them. Élcio has been asked about the case on and off for the rest of his life. Élcio has declined every interview except the one that confirmed his name is Élcio. In 2004, the Brazilian television program Linha Direta Justiça ran an hour-long reconstruction of the case called Máscaras de Chumbo. The program aired nationally. The program was the first time most Brazilians had heard the story. In 1968, the editor of Flying Saucer Review, Charles Bowen, a British ufologist, published the first English-language write-up. In 1980, the French-American ufologist Jacques Vallée went to Niteroi in person and walked the hill. He did not publish a monograph. In 2026, the case is on a Reddit thread on r/unresolved mysteries that someone has re-upped this morning. It is on a YouTube channel called Tales from the Bottle. It is on a Brazilian music podcast. It is on a TikTok creator with 3 million followers. The cases that last do not last because they were solved. There are 3 ways the case has been read, and none of them has survived a second reading. The first reading: a poisoned capsule. The 2 men went up the hill. They drank something. They died. The masks were incidental. The men's faces were dark because they had put on masks made of lead, and the lead had leached into the blood, and the rest was dramatic presentation. The reading doesn't explain the notebook. The reading doesn't explain the light. The reading doesn't explain the wedding ring staying on the body. The reading doesn't explain where the rest of the money went. The second reading: a spiritist misadventure. The 2 men went up the hill expecting a treasure. They took a recetuário, a spiritist prescription for a seance. The capsules were the prescription. The masks were protective. Spiritist seances sometimes require the participants to cover their faces. The men died because the prescription was wrong. The reading doesn't explain the notebook instruction line. The reading doesn't explain the light. The reading doesn't explain why the men's families have asked for the wedding rings back and been told no. The third reading: a contact. The 2 men went up the hill expecting contact with non-human intelligences. The instructions in the notebook, 1630, 1830, await the signal, are the structure of a contact protocol. The masks were part of the protocol. The capsules were part of the protocol. The light was part of the protocol. The men died because the protocol did not protect them. The reading doesn't explain what killed them. The case has outlived the dictatorship. The case has outlived the Cruzeiro. The case has outlived every theory advanced for it. The case has not been closed. In the years since, every person who picked up the case has done the same thing: translated the notebook. The translations differ. The translations will always differ. The notebook is in broken Portuguese. The notebook was written by someone who did not consider his reader. The notebook was written by someone who considered his reader an operator. What was written in the notebook, and why no one ever read it the same way twice. Stay past the signal, dear listener. The notebook still says what it said. The case is on a hill in Niterói you can still walk up. The hill is still called Morro do Vintem. The clearing is still there. The path is still there. The masks are in the police evidence locker at Niteroi. The mineral water bottle is in the police evidence locker at Niteroi. The notebook is in the case file. The case is part of the Brazilian Imaginário now, the country's shared storehouse of unexplained cold case images. The case is read by teenagers in school projects. The case is read by amateur ufologists at conferences. The case is read by true crime podcasters who have read all the other cases and are working through the back catalog. The case is read by anyone who picks up the lead mask's photograph and turns it over and looks at the impression inside the mask. And the impression inside the mask is the impression of a face. And the face is the impression of a man who put the mask on. And the mask went on the wrong way. The case still asks the same question. Why did the mask go on the wrong way? The case, if it is to be read at all, is best read the way you read the notebook. Slowly. Twice. With someone else in the room. The reading of the case does not stay the same. The case is not a piece of evidence. The case is a piece of reading. The reading of the case is the case. 16:30 be at the specified place. 18:30 ingest the capsules. After the effect, protect the metals. Await the signal, mask. The reading of the notebook does not stay the same. The reading of the notebook has never stayed the same. What persists today is not the answer to the case. What persists is the question the case asks. What persists is the routine the case imposes on every person who picks it up. You read the notebook again, you read it a third time, you translate it, you ask someone else to translate it, the translations differ, you sit with the difference. What persists is also the mask, the lead mask, the mask with the impression of the face on the inside, the mask that went on the wrong way. The mask is on the wall of the police evidence locker at Niteroi. The mask has been photographed and rephotographed and rephotographed again. The mask is the case, almost. The mask is the case. Stay past the signal, dear listener. The notebook still says what it said. The notebook is still in the case file. The wedding ring is still in the case file. The mineral water bottle is in the police evidence locker at Niteroi. The lead masks are in the same locker. The masks have been photographed and rephotographed and rephotographed again. The notebook has been transcribed. The notebook has been retranscribed. The notebook has been retranslated. The notebook has been reinterpreted by every Brazilian student who picked the case up for a school project, and by every UAP researcher who picked the case up for a magazine column, and by every podcaster who picked the case up for a Tuesday video. The reading of the notebook does not stay the same. The reading is the case. Sleep well, dear listener. If this episode helped you see the past a little differently, subscribe. There's always a place for you at the fire. Next time, we go to the high desert of New Mexico.